Saturday morning, it's time to talk technology, and our tech expert, Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, joining us here on Power Talk Radio. Luis, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Mark. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Hey, off the air, you and I were talking about the fire at the battery storage facility operated by Vistra Energy in Moss Landing. This started late Thursday afternoon. It burned all the way through Thursday evening, and we're recording this Friday morning, and hazmat teams and emergency personnel still on the site at that time. Don't know how long it's going to be before the fire burns itself out, but as I understand, with these types of battery fires, even putting foam on them doesn't necessarily put them out the way, say, if you had a wood frame house burning and you hit it with tons of water, you can eventually put the fire out. It doesn't necessarily work that way with this type of technology. But what you and I were discussing was the fact that the County Board of Supervisors are having an emergency meeting, or they had one on Friday morning at 8:30, about the time that we're recording this program. We don't know what has come out of that meeting, since by the time they finish meeting, this program will be in the can and on its way to being broadcast on Saturday. But there have been calls by people, why do we need a facility like this in an ecologically sensitive area along the coast? If as a society we have to have these battery storage facilities, why can't they put them out in the middle of the desert, like on unoccupied land owned by the federal government? And you were pointing out that one of the reasons why these battery storage facilities are located in coastal zones, and I know I was talking to someone earlier Friday morning about this, and they had mentioned that they had seen a news report out of San Luis Obispo that the old Morro Bay power plant, very similar to the PG&E plant, built about the same time as the plant in Moss Landing, late 40s, early 50s, is set to undergo a similar transition where it becomes an EV battery storage facility. So you brought up an interesting point about why these plants are sited on coastlines, and what is the reason for that?
So these power plants are designed with very densely packed battery packs. So, think of the lithium-ion batteries that we have in our laptops and on our phones, and imagine millions of those tightly packed into big containers. They generate a lot of heat. And one of the ways that you can cool them off is by using seawater, which comes up through the old pipes that were put in when the power plant was there, to cool these battery packs in a very inexpensive fashion. Otherwise, you'd have to build air conditioning infrastructure or some other cooling infrastructure that would be cost prohibitive and really negate the value of having all those battery packs available in case you need extra power at some point. So they have to be built near places where you can get that cold water to use as a coolant in the system.
So that's why that was brought to Moss Landing and, say, not to the middle of the Mojave Desert.
Right, yeah. I mean, if you put it out in the desert someplace, you would have to figure out a way to cool some of those battery packs. And it can be done. I mean, in Australia, they actually have some of those battery plants out in the middle of the desert, but they've managed to find a way to bring in cold water to use as a coolant. But it's one of those things that I think it's important that we do an investigation to figure out what caused it and how to prevent it from happening. But like every industrial accident, you just can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. We're just going to have to figure out what the root cause was and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Well, we've got a bunch of things to talk about today, and so we have some consumer alerts for people. One that I wanted to share with you, and you and I were discussing this via email earlier this week, that we talk about the incredible tragedy down in Los Angeles County with the out-of-control wildfires that have displaced thousands of people from their homes and destroyed thousands of buildings. And it's going to take years and years and years to rebuild, if ever, in that area. And people being generous and wanting to help out want to donate money to organizations that purportedly are going to help people rebuild. But as is always the case, every time there's a tragedy that comes up, not only do we have legitimate nonprofits and charities that are always available for help, but all of a sudden new ones pop out of the woodwork. And while some of those new ones are legitimate, oftentimes there are scammers that are doing this as a means of separating you from your money. You and your good intentions and your money, they'd rather have it in their pockets than helping people. And there are plenty of scams going on out there right now. I received a note from a friend of mine, Kristen. It was about a scam that she has been made aware of. And she says, don't fall for this very sophisticated debit card scam. And here's how it goes. You get a call, and the call comes in, and on your phone, the caller ID says it's your bank, Wells Fargo, B of A, whatever. And you answer the phone. The guy says he's from the fraud department calling about your debit card ending in the last four numbers, and somehow he has those numbers correctly. The quote-unquote fraud officer asks if you've been traveling and reports that there are two suspicious charges charges that happened at out-of-state stores, like a Lowe's and a Walmart. And she replied, nope, it wasn't me. He then says that they'll send me a new card. He already knows my address. He knows all of my phone numbers. And he says, I'm going to send a verification code to your cell phone and wants you to read it to him. Then he will ask you for your PIN number on your debit card so that he can deactivate your old card. That's where she said no. But he has an answer for her suspicions. He says, look at the number I'm calling from. It matches the number on the back of your card. It does. But still then I said, let me call you back. And he hung up. She reported this to her bank's fraud department. And the bank said, we would never ask for your PIN number. Now, they immediately canceled her card and they issued her a new one. But this is a very, very sophisticated scam to empty people's bank accounts, Lewis.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that goes around, and it gets more and more sophisticated all the time. And it just goes to show that people have to be wary of anything that is even mildly suspicious or that comes out of the blue. Most texts that you get from your bank or from legitimate credit card companies will usually have a statement like, we will never ask you for any information via text or something like that, a disclaimer of some sort that makes it clear that this is something that's legit. When you get a text or a call and it seems suspicious, then hang up, because it's really easy for caller ID to be spoofed. It happens all the time. There are stories of people getting calls from what is purported to be PG&E, for example, saying that they're late on their bill, and if they don't pay it right now, the power is going to be turned off. And usually it's, something that has to be immediately done. There's a sense of urgency, a sense of, crisis. And when that happens, that is a real red flag that this is not legit. Nobody's going to call you, PG&E or the trash company is not going to call you at the last minute and say, if you don't pay right now, we're going to cut off your service.
Exactly.
It doesn't work that way.
And there are programs, there are apps that anybody can get. They're free. One of them is called Spoof Card, and it allows people to spoof telephone numbers. So as an example, I could go and download that app from the App Store, sign up for an account, and let's say I happen to know Lewis's cell phone number. I could put his cell phone number in as an originating number for a call, and then call someone that you know. And they'd answer the phone and say, hi, Lewis, because they would see your name and caller ID come up on their phone. These programs, they ought to be illegal, I think, because they are only used for one reason, and that is subterfuge.
Yeah, and it boggles the mind sometimes what is allowed, especially on the Android store, where they pretty much don't have any sort of filter unless it's something that's malware. They do, once that's discovered, they do kick it off, but they don't do anything proactively. Right. Apple is a little bit better about it in their store in terms of vetting products. The apps have to go through a process to be allowed on the Apple store. But even in that case, a lot of the recent rulings, especially in Europe, about Apple's tight control of the store has loosened the regulations a bit that Apple was using internally to vet those applications, because a lot of the European Union said that was anti-competitive. So, even those protections are breaking down a little bit in the Apple ecosystem.
And speaking of protecting people from these frauds, I know you wanted to add something because we ran across a story detailing this about the LA wildfires in the New York Times. Profit off of my tragedy. Donation scams are just compounding the suffering for fire victims. Yeah,
a lot of people have been using GoFundMe as a way to raise money to get their lives back, or even people have set up GoFundMes for relatives, and they've raised over $100 million in a relatively short period of time. The problem is, no good deed goes unpunished, right? So bad guys are jumping into the fray as well, and what they've done is do things like they'll create a GoFundMe page that looks exactly like a legit page, right? So let's say Mary Jane has a GoFundMe page to raise money. Well, they will basically hijack all the images, all the look and feel of her GoFundMe page, set up another one, and then try to get people to use that page instead of the legitimate page. So if you want to use GoFundMe and you want to contribute, please do so, but protect yourself by going to GoFundMe.com and scrolling down to the bottom, and you'll see a big icon of California that will take you to a place where all of the GoFundMe sites that are there are legit. Mm-hmm. They've been vetted by GoFundMe, and they are safe to contribute to.
Now, another site that does that, and I heard the Los Angeles County District Attorney cautioning about these scams the other day in a news conference, and the DA mentioned that people should go to a site called Charity Navigator, and that apparently is a clearinghouse that separates legitimate from illegitimate charities.
Yeah, and if you see a link on Instagram or Facebook or some other social media site that pulls at your heartstrings, don't don't click on the link. Go to the actual website, whether it's GoFundMe or Charity Navigator, and contribute that way. So you're sure that you're not clicking a link that's going to take you to a place where you contribute money with good intents, but it actually goes to bad guys who are just stealing it.
And let's see, one other thing we want to mention this morning, it's AI. And on livescience.com in their technology department, they say that just 2 hours is all it takes for AI agents to replicate your personality with 85% accuracy.
Yeah.
You know, I participated in this. They did mine, and they came up with 100% accuracy in 5 minutes.
Didn't take that long. Huh?
No.
This is really interesting. Is that, they developed this AI engine that it goes through an interview, 2-hour interview of a person, and then based on your answers and the interactions that you have with the AI, it can then basically become you. And the way they do this is they have you take a series of tests, and then they have the AI version of you take those same tests. And almost every case, 85% of the time, it's almost identical. The personality that results are almost identical. So AI is becoming more powerful. And it's kind of scary. I think in the near future, we're probably going to have the ability to create, kind of an AI doppelganger of ourselves that we can send into the meetings and do all the boring stuff that we don't want to do while we go out and play and golf and do all the fun things that we want to do.
There you go. Yeah, it's when the AI agents that they create for you start wanting to have fun and put you to work. That's when you have to worry.
Yeah, exactly.
Last thing here before we wrap up, a news headline that just came across. Now, remember, folks, Lewis and I record this program on Friday mornings, and apparently NBC News is reporting as of 8:30 Pacific time on Friday morning that the Supreme Court has given the green light to a new law that could ban TikTok within U.S. borders within days. So The court Friday delivered a blow to TikTok by upholding the law that could potentially lead to the video sharing social media platform being banned in the United States. And by the way, the justices, in an unsigned opinion with no dissents, rejected the free speech challenge filed by the company, meaning the law is set to go into effect on Sunday, tomorrow, as planned.
Yeah, the Biden administration has come out and said, look, because it's so close to the transfer to a new administration, we're not going to enforce it as of Sunday, that this is going to fall on the Trump administration when they take over on Monday to figure out how to save TikTok if it's possible. Unfortunately for them, I know Trump is trying to, somehow make it go away, but the reality is that it passed with huge majorities of both parties. It was signed into law, and once signed into law, the only way to undo it is either TikTok gets sold or it gets shut down.
Right.
Unless they overturn the law, which I don't think is going to happen.
Nope, doesn't look like that's going to happen. We've run a little bit over today, but we had some great stuff to discuss, so we wanted to take time to do it all here. But you've been listening to Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group. Online, it's alvareztg.com. At AlvarezTG, that is the X handle, and Luis, the toll-free number for that I-Team.
Give us a call at 866-78-I-Team. That's 866-784-8326.
And looking ahead to Monday, what are we talking about?
Well, Monday, we're going to talk about a new trust mark that will help consumers determine what products, electronic products that they buy at places like Best Buy and Amazon are trustworthy and which ones are not.
Tune in starting 8:30 Monday morning. Join us for that. Luis, thanks so much for your time and have a great rest of the weekend.
You too, my friend. Take care.